Europe is not the only victim of climate change. The Horn of Africa, which is the fourth largest peninsula in the world, is facing its worst drought in over 4 decades. Communities are facing the threat of starvation after 4 consecutive failed rainy seasons in parts of Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia. Last 4 rainy seasons were all marred by below average rainfall, leaving large swathes of the countries to face the most prolonged drought in recent history. This year's rainy season was the driest on record in the last 70 years. Early forecasts indicate that upcoming rainy season is also likely to fail. The dry spell began in October 2020. At least 19.4 million people have been affected by the drought in the last 2 years. And across Ethiopia, Kenya and Somalia, at least 18.6 million people are already waking each day to high levels of acute food insecurity and rising malnutrition. Researchers say that this figure could increase to 20 million by September this year. In the continent of Africa, drought is just not about lack of water or farming challenges. Droughts trigger an array of unprecedented emergency situations for communities, like livestock. Pastoralist families rely upon livestock for sustenance and livelihoods. In the last 2 years, at least 7 million livestock have died across the region. Food prices are spiking. More than 11.6 million people cannot access enough water for drinking, cooking and cleaning. There are risks of gender-based violence, sexual exploitation and abuse. Prolonged droughts hamper children's access to education. The frequency and severity of droughts in recent years has made it harder for families to recover between shocks. And finally, communities are struggling to cope with other shocks like conflict, flooding, COVID-19 and desert locusts. And joining us now is the director of South North, a climate organization based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Robbie Redder. Welcome to WION.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Experts predict that the situation could get worse in the coming months if measures are not implemented to avert a catastrophe. In your view, what are some of these precautionary efforts that need to be employed by the governments in Africa?
In terms of, I guess you're referring in terms of drought and how can we become drought resilient? Is that the question?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. In terms of, with climate change, droughts are becoming more severe and recurrent, and also floods. At this point in time in Ethiopia, for instance, there's big floods. There's a lot of rain and big floods. In terms of, the measures to take, is to adapt, measures to adapt to the impacts of climate change, basically to improve life in a changing climate, to survive within a changing climate. I think overall, in periods of high rain, we need to have efficient use of water resources, groundwater as a source. Developing our groundwater resource is also important, but to use it efficiently and not to deplete it. Low dry land crops that grow in dry lands are important measures as well. In my country, Ethiopia, there's a lot of work going around that. Basically, either crops that grow better in dry lands or variants of crops that are drought resistant. So those can be measures, but all these things may not be sufficient and at the rate the climate is changing, at the rate the multi-year dry seasons we encounter. But these are some measures one can take. Of course, there needs also to be behavioral change, societal change, and the rest. It's not just infrastructure that solves it.
Robbie, recently in Kenya, it was reported that almost 200 elephants died due to the effects of climate change. How serious is this threat? And the communities living in these arid and semi-arid regions on the continent, what is it that they can do to protect the livestock, which is their lifeline?
Yes, I mean, it's a tough question. It's a difficult question. With cattle, they also have in this communities, that they're valuable, that it's their lifeline. You're right, but there's also customs around it. There's also culturally, the more you have, the wealthier you are, although you might not get as much from them. One aspect is maybe we're not able to sustain that level of livestock, and maybe efficient, more, limiting livestock numbers and looking into, having them be more efficient, in terms of production, in terms of, their size as well. If you have 100 cattle instead of 1,000, as is the case, there is a better chance of the 100 being well kept and surviving better. The core issue is, of course, there's water shortage, there isn't sufficient grazing land, and so on and so forth. And these are issues that will be there for a long time to come. Of course, whatever I said in terms of efficient water resource use, tapping into groundwater in a more efficient manner, and so on and so forth, can also alleviate this.
Okay.
And also, we shouldn't, depend on rain and rain-fed systems for, grazing land and so on. And maybe we can efficiently irrigate or create efficiency.
All right. Robbie Reda, we are out of time. We'll have to end this discussion there. Thank you very much for making time and for talking to WION today.
Yeah, thank you. Do appreciate it. Have a good day.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.